The Tale of a Millionaire and a Beggar. A Lesson from a Black Man. The rain fell like 1,000 tiny daggers, swift and unrelenting. Gabriella clutched her daughter, Lily, close to her chest, their bodies huddled beneath the thin protection of a faded umbrella. It was one of those bleak mornings where the sky seemed to weep, mirroring the sorrow that had become a familiar companion in Gabriella's life. The pavement shimmered with puddles that reflected the stark reality of her poverty. She had fought tooth and nail to pull herself out of despair, and now, in a moment of desperate hope, she was racing to a job interview that could change everything. But hope came with a heavy price. Lily's frail body leaned against her, burning with fever, cheeks flushed. Each step felt monumental, each breath a burden. Cars splashed muddy water as they sped by, indifferent to her plight. The world rushed around her, a gray blur of ambition and apathy. Gabriella's heart raced as she whispered. The receptionist barely acknowledged her, tapping away at her computer, her indifference a dagger sharper than the rain. Nerves gnawed at Gabriella. A surge of desperation flooded through her veins, pushing her to the brink. The thought of breaking into the CEO's office flickered in her mind. A reckless gamble, yet it felt like the only option left. She slipped past indifferent eyes, adrenaline coursing as she found herself standing before the closed door, her heart pounding louder than the city outside. With a shallow breath, she pushed the door open. The luxurious office felt like a different world, opulent and intimidating. There, behind a polished desk, sat Christopher Anderson, the millionaire, the cold symbol of success. His icy demeanor sent shivers down her spine. But as his gaze fell on Lily, something shifted. The severity in his eyes softened, memories flickering like shadows. A brief nostalgia twisted his mouth, a connection forming, fragile but undeniable. Before S. Without hesitation, Christopher arose from his seat, determination in his stride. They would go to a pediatric clinic. He would cover everything. Relief washed over her, but it came mixed with confusion. Was this generosity or pity? As days passed, her worries melted slightly with Lily's recovery. But it wasn't just the health challenge that tugged at Gabriella now. It was the undeniable bond forming with Christopher. He offered her a job, a lifeline thrown in turbulent waters. Yet as they shared laughter and light moments, his eyes held a warmth that sparked feelings she had buried deep within. One evening, under the soft glow of the city lights, Christopher surprised her with a proposal, a marriage, a union that bore the weight of hope and uncertainty. As magical as it was, doubt clenched at Gabriella's heart. Would this happiness endure? Could they overcome the barriers that still loomed, casting shadows over their intertwined fates? Hey, before we continue with this ink, take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you are still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming up. And since you're here, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, from which city are you watching this? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Christopher's proposal hung in the air like the last notes of a forgotten song. Gabriella's heart raced in her chest, caught between the warmth of his gaze and the cold grip of doubt. She smiled, but it felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. I need time, she stammered, searching for the right words. Would they really be happy together? The shadows that loomed in her mind were like heavy clouds, blocking out her bright moments. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hallway. They both jerked, startled. Christopher's express. Before she could react, he hurried to the door and flung it open. The sight that met them sent a chill spiraling down Gabriella's spine. A man, disheveled and wild-eyed, stumbled into the office, clutching a bloodied hand. "Help! Please, I need help!" he gasped, collapsing against the doorframe. A thick metallic scent filled the room, overwhelming and sharp. Gabriella's throat tightened. Who was this man? What had just happened? Christopher rushed to him, voice steady but urgent. "What happened? Are you okay?" He examined the man with a practiced eye, but Gabriella couldn't make sense of any of it. Fear twisted in her gut as the man muttered something incoherent about a robbery gone wrong. Gabriella's thoughts raced back to Lily, alone at home. Had she made a mistake in accepting help from this stranger, from Christopher? Suddenly, a woman burst into the office, her eyes wide with terror. "Daniel! Oh my God, are you all right?" she sobbed, rushing to the man. "I told you not to go back. They'll find you." The room felt like it was closing in. Who was this woman, and why was she afraid? Gabriella stepped back, her heart pounding. Christopher reached out to comfort the woman, concern etched on his face. But Gabriella felt a fissure starting to form between them. "Daniel? From the news?" Gabriella whispered, fear slicing through her. Her heart dropped as she recognized the name. The man had been involved in a highly publicized case, a theft that spiraled into violence, covered sensationally, drawing headlines for days. But he had also been a victim, a pawn in a much darker game. "Shh," the woman hissed, looking around the corner. "We can't stay here. They'll find us." Her eyes darted to Gabriella, assessing her, judging her. Were they safe? And who was they? Panic surged within Gabriella as the room felt suffocating. Christopher turned to Gabriella, eyes shadowed with worry. "This isn't what it looks like. We need to help them." His voice was firm, but Gabriella could see the cracks forming on his facade. The warmth she felt moments ago, it melted away, replaced by doubt. Was he entangled in something sinister? What secrets had he been hiding? In that moment, everything shifted. She wasn't just a desperate mother seeking help. She stood on a precipice, facing a reality she hadn't anticipated. The world she hoped to join, the life she yearned for, was suddenly tangled in lies, violence, and danger. "Are we in danger?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Christopher hesitated, and that pause, it echoed louder than any words. The room stilled as everyone waited, breath held tight. Outside, the city continued to roar, oblivious to their turmoil. In her heart, Gabriella sensed a storm brewing, one that might sweep everything away. Would she lose Lily's chance at healing? Or perhaps lose herself in this web of chaos? "Answer me," she demanded, fear sparking urgency in her voice. And it was in that moment that uncertainty settled deep within her, a chasm that would only grow as the shadows of their truths began to unfurl. The room stilled as everyone waited, breath held tight. Outside, the city continued to roar, oblivious to their turmoil. In her heart, Gabriella sensed a storm brewing, one that might sweep everything away. Would she lose Lily's chance at healing? Or perhaps lose herself in this web of chaos? "Answer me," she demanded, fear sparking urgency in her voice. Christopher shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to Daniel, then back to Gabriella. "We're not in danger. Not if we help them. Please, trust me." "Trust you?" Gabriella felt anger swelling within her. "You brought this into my life." A part of her wanted to run, to grab Lily and escape. But the other part, curiosity mixed with concern, held her feet to the ground. As she stood there, the silence felt thick, almost suffocating. The tension broke when Daniel's breath hitched, his eyes rolling back. "No, not now," he gasped, clutching his chest, panic carving deeper lines into the woman's face next to him. "Daniel!" the woman screamed, her hands trembling as she tried to prop him up. "Stay with me, please!" A terrible feeling twisted in Gabriella's stomach as she watched the man crumble. Christopher rushed to his side, urgency replacing his earlier composure. "Get the medics!" he shouted, panic coloring his voice. Gabriella's heart hammered as she fumbled with her phone, finger hovering over the call button, uncertainty gnawing at her. But just then, the door burst open again. A figure rushed in, silhouette distorted through the glass door, dripping rainwater. "They're coming! We have to go!" the man shouted, voice sharp with terror. Gabriella turned, and everything crashed around her in slow motion. Her mind raced, heart pounded louder. "Who is? Now!" the stranger yelled, diving for Daniel, his hands moving with frantic precision. "Get him up! We can't stay!" Panic seized the room. The woman with Daniel looked around, tears spilling down her cheeks as she whispered, "They know we're here. They'll find us." Suddenly, sirens wailed in the distance, almost like a death knell. Gabriella's gaze darted back to Christopher, searching for reassurance. But all she saw was the tension tightening his jaw, his eyes flickering with unhidden fear. Who was this man really? What had she walked into? "Gabriella, we need to leave, now." Christopher's voice cut through the noise. In that moment, she felt a sudden rush of protectiveness for Lily, alone and vulnerable at home. She turned to run, but something cold brushed against her arm. The stranger was holding a gun, pointing it directly at Christopher. "Get away from him!" the stranger screamed, eyes wild with desperation. "Wait! What are you doing?" Gabriella's voice cracked, panic spilling out. "Put it down!" "Shut!" he barked, keeping his gaze on Christopher, who stood frozen, the shock etching deeper into his features. "Daniel, come on!" the woman screamed again, pulling at him. But he was limp, blood beginning to pool under his hand. Just then, out of nowhere, the lights flickered, then the power went out completely, plunging them into darkness. The sirens grew louder, the air thick with desperation. Gabriella's heart raced. Where was Lily? "Christopher!" Gabriella yelled, but it echoed back in the dark. The gun went off with a deafening crack, and everything spiraled. Screams fused with chaos, voices overlapping, fear mixing with confusion. In those frantic moments, nothing made sense anymore. Who were these people? What did Christopher get himself into? And then she saw it. An image burned into her mind. A tattoo peeking from beneath Christopher's sleeve, the same one she saw in a news report about a notorious crime syndicate. "Christopher?" she breathlessly whispered, her voice trembling. "What have you done?" But before the world could answer her, a blinding flash filled the room, cutting through the shadows. "Get down!" someone shouted, but Gabriella felt frozen, standing at the epicenter of a storm that promised to tear her life apart. And as chaos erupted, she knew nothing would ever be the same again. The blinding flash filled the room, casting strange shadows against the wall. Gabriella felt her heart drop. The gunshot echoed, but chaos folded in on itself. In the split second of confusion, Christopher's gaze locked onto hers, panic morphing to something darker, something she couldn't quite define. The lights flickered again, and then went out for real. "Stay low," someone yelled. Gabriella hunched down, her pulse racing as she felt the air shift, thick with fear and confusion. Her breaths were shallow, each inhale tasting of iron and desperation. "Get behind me," Christopher shouted. But that tone, it was no longer reassuring. It was commanding. Fear clawed at Gabriella. Who was this man she thought she knew? Suddenly, a heavy thud echoed through the darkness. The sound of Daniel's body hitting the floor sent a shiver down Gabriella's spine. "Help him!" she cried, her voice cracking. But the woman was lost in her own panic, trying to stem the bleeding pooling beneath Daniel. Christopher moved toward the doorway, stepping into the shadows. "We can't stay here," he shouted again, his voice cutting through the chaos. Just as he reached the threshold, another sound pierced the air, a rush of footsteps from the hallway. "Where are they?" A commanding voice boomed from outside, sharp as broken glass. "I know they're in there. Don't let them escape." Gabriella's heart raced faster. "What's happening?" she whispered, but no one heard her amidst the clamor. Her stomach twisted in knots. The air was thick with tension. And then, another surprise. An unexpected hand brushed against her shoulder. It was the gunman. "Move!" he hissed, pulling her up with a fierce grip. Panic flooded her mind. Was he going to hurt her? "Don't!" Christopher yelled, eyes fully wide now, shock evident. "Let her go!" For a heartbeat, time froze. Gabriella glanced back at Christopher. The warmth she once felt in his presence now felt like ice. His gaze shifted to the gunman, and suddenly everything seemed to slow, the buzzing chaos dimming around them. "Please, just help us," Gabriella begged, torn between fear and loyalty. The gunman's expression flickered. Was that a hint of regret? "This wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't." Then it happened. A loud crash echoed from somewhere deeper in the building. The gunman flinched, eyes darting toward the sound, revealing a crack of fear. "They're here." Distracted, his grip loosened. Gabriella seized the moment, spinning away. She bolted towards Christopher. They collided, his body warm against hers, but the panic didn't lift. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded, anger mixing with fear. "What kind of trouble are we in?" Before Christopher could answer, the door burst open. A figure stormed in, silhouetted against the dim light. A woman, angry, desperate, eyes wild with determination. "Get back!" she shouted, lunging forward. At her feet, a gun was suddenly pointed at Christopher. Gabriella's breath hitched. "Who are you?" The woman's eyes flickered to Gabriella, then to Christopher, betrayal painting her features. "You lied to me." "Renee," Christopher began, but the woman cut him off. "No more games. You think you can play both sides?" She stepped closer, finger brushing the trigger. Everything fractured in that moment. Gabriella's heart raced, the room spinning. Who was this woman? Why was she so furious? Then it hit her. A memory, a name resurfacing from news articles. Renee? The one from the case? Renee's eyes narrowed. "So, you're part of this now too?" "Part of what?" Gabriella felt dizzy with confusion. And that's when Christopher's phone buzzed in his pocket, loud and jarring. He fumbled for it, the screen lighting up to reveal a message that seemed to drain all the color from his face. The room fell silent, every heart clenched tight as the reality hit them all. "It's from them, isn't it?" Gabriella's voice faltered, understanding crashing down on her like a wave. "You are in deep with them. Who are you, Christopher?" He hesitated, his eyes darting between Gabriella and Renee. And in that frozen moment, Gabriella saw the truth hanging in the air, heavy and threatening. Before she could process it, the phone buzzed again, a notification. A countdown message that read, "You have 1 hour." And as the tension thickened, Gabriella felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Everything she thought she knew crumbled into pieces. Would she ever feel safe again, or would the real struggle just be beginning? The countdown on the phone glowed in the dim light, a heart-stopping reminder that time was slipping away. Gabriella felt the air grow heavier, each second stretching taut. She stared at Christopher, her heart pounding in her chest. "What have you done?" The words came out as a strained whisper, packed with fear and betrayal. "Listen to me." He stepped closer, urgency flashing in his eyes. But she couldn't shake the gut feeling in her stomach. Everything about him felt different. The warmth she had felt, now replaced with the chill of doubt. Suddenly, the woman, Renee, with fire in her eyes, pointed her gun at Christopher again. "You won't get to explain yourself while they suffer for your mistakes." "Enough!" Christopher's voice boomed, echoing in the dark, and for a heartbeat, it silenced the chaos outside. "You think you know everything, but you don't." Gabriella's mind spun. "What aren't you telling me?" She could see the tension in the room crackling like a live wire. The gunman backed away, eyes flicking from Renee to Christopher. "You're in deep, man. This is bigger than us." Christopher faced him, a tight jaw and clenched fists. "You don't know what you're talking about." But the way he shifted, the way his gaze darted, felt like everything was coming unraveled. "Then tell us." Gabriella's voice rose, echoing her despair. Every second felt like an eternity, the shadows creeping closer, tightening around them. Outside, sirens wailed, piercing the air and drowning out their voices. "We have to go," the gunman shouted, panic blasting through him. "Not without Daniel," Renee cried, glancing down at the blood pooling around him. "He can't die." As the sirens grew louder, a shocking crack punctuated the chaos. Another gunshot. The door shook, splinters flying in all directions. Everything froze. Then it happened. A figure burst through the door, not another gunman, but a small girl, Lily. "Mommy," she screamed, eyes wide and terrified. "I couldn't find you. I was so scared." "No." Gabriella's heart dropped as she rushed forward, arms outstretched. She yanked Lily into her grasp, almost crushing her. Relief flooded her, but the panic didn't fade. "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be. What's going on?" Lily whimpered, glancing around at the chaos, her small body trembling. And in that moment, everything shattered into a million pieces. Christopher fell to his knees, eyes trained on Lily, caught between horror and bewilderment. "What are you doing here? Why are you with her?" Renee's voice sliced through the air, sharper than the gun in her grip. Gabriella shot her a glare. "Stop it! She's just a little girl!" But the tension escalated. The air thickened with confusion and anger. "You lied! You thought you could hide her from this?" Renee shouted at Christopher, her gun wavering slightly. "Stop! Just stop!" Gabriella's voice cracked, the fear clawing at her insides. She turned back to Christopher, searching his eyes. "What do you mean?" The look on Christopher's face twisted into something unrecognizable. And then it was all there. The memories, the whispers from news reports. Things Gabriella had brushed aside. With a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Lily isn't safe here because she's part of this." Gabriella felt her world tilt. Part of what? The silence rang loud, and suddenly the phone buzzed again, the screen flashing a new message. "Remember, she is the key. Do not let her go." "Lily!" Gabriella clutched her daughter tightly, horror crashing over her like a wave. "What does that mean? Christopher, what does that mean?" In his eyes, she saw a storm brewing, something raw and terrifying. As the chaos outside swelled, a terrible realization flickered in her mind. If Lily was the key, then what did that make her? "Run!" Christopher's voice pierced through the confusion, but it was too late. The door slammed open again, and shadows poured into the room, hostile and looming. Gabriella tightened her grip on Lily, her heart racing. Secrets were swirling, and everything was unraveling. "What's real?" she gasped. As the figures converged and the sirens blared, confusion turned into chaos. The tension erupted, and Gabriella realized nothing would ever be the same again. The walls were closing in, and she could feel the world crumbling. Nothing left but uncertainty and dread. The chaos in the room surged like a tidal wave. Gabriella cradled Lily against her chest, trying to shield her from the madness around them. The shadows stalked closer. Sirens wailed, echoes of imminent danger. "Stay close," she whispered fiercely, her heart racing. Christopher moved toward the door, tension coiling in the air. "We can't stay here," he shouted again, urgency lacing his words. But just as he reached for the doorknob, there was a violent explosion. A loud crack, and glass shattered everywhere, scattered like confetti. Gabriella jolted, instinctively crouching lower. "What was that?" Panic flared in her voice. She couldn't look away from Christopher, who stood frozen, eyes wide. Renee barked, "Damn it! They're getting inside!" Her grip on the gun tightened, knuckles white with desperation. The very foundations of the moment began to tremble under a weight of dread. Just then, a figure pushed past the wreckage strewn across the doorway. A man, disheveled, dust-covered, eyes wild with fear. "Get down!" he yelled, a blur of motion rushing inside. Gabriella felt instinct kick into gear. She shielded Lily with her body. "You don't understand," the man panted, glancing around the room with desperate urgency. "You're all in danger. They're coming for you. You need to leave now." "Who are they?" Gabriella shouted, fear gripping her insides. Everything felt off, like some twisted episode of a nightmare. But just before he could respond, the door exploded inward, crashing against the wall. A squad of armed men, clad in black and wearing masks, stormed in, weapons drawn, shouts piercing the chaos. "Hands in the air, now!" Gabriella's heart plummeted. Fear turned her insides to ice. This was it. Everything was unraveling. The walls were closing in, suffocating her thoughts. She clutched Lily tightly, feeling her daughter's small body shiver against her. "Run!" Christopher yelled, but his voice was drowned in the chaos. The masked figures shouted commands, pushing forward. Panic surged. Gabriella couldn't think, wouldn't think. But then, in the midst of the chaos, Renee snapped. "You!" She pointed at the newcomer, the dust-covered man. "You brought this here, didn't you? You made this worse." He held his hands up. "No, I was trying to warn you. You don't get it." But his voice was swallowed by the chaos ringing in Gabriella's ears. She wanted to scream, wanted to bolt, but was paralyzed by fear for Lily. Suddenly, Christopher took a calculated step forward. A different kind of resolve overtook him. "Stop," he commanded the intruders boldly. "You don't want to do this." And just like that, everything shifted again. The intruders paused, confusion rippling through them. "What do you know?" One of them barked, taking an involuntary step back. And that's when Gabriella noticed it. A flicker of recognition among the intruders. They hesitated. There was a shift. "Christopher," she breathed. In that moment, 1,000 questions flooded her mind as she pieced together little fragments of their life. The meetings, the whispers, the secrecy. With a sudden twist of fate, the dust-covered man revealed a tattoo on his arm, identical to the one she'd seen on Christopher's sleeve. "You're with them, aren't you? You've known this whole time." It was as if the ground crumbled beneath her. A reality she'd built her hopes on shattered like fragile glass. "Christopher?" She couldn't breathe. "What is going on?" He met her eyes, and in those depths she saw something darker. A hidden truth, a chasm of secrets. The urgency shifted. The room spun. "I wanted to protect you, too." But before he could finish, another loud report sounded, and the room exploded into chaos again. Gabriella's heart raced. Everything around her was swirling, a vortex of confusion. It felt as if the very fabric of what she believed tore apart. "What have you done?" she whispered, grasping at the edges of this reality, fearing the answer. And then it all collapsed. The tension broke as Lily screamed. A flash, a blinding light erupted, engulfing them all. In an instant, everything changed. The room fell silent. The light faded, revealing not the chaos, but an unfamiliar place altogether. They stood in a vast, dimly lit warehouse, the echoes of their voices bouncing back like ghosts of their pasts. Confusion settled over them like a blanket. Where were they? Had they just stepped into another realm of their twisted fate? "No, no way," the dust-covered man stammered, eyes wide with disbelief. He looked around in a panic. Gabriella's heart dropped. They weren't just in danger anymore. They were lost in a nightmare where nothing was what it seemed. Everything she thought she knew about Christopher, about safety, twisted in her gut like a cold knife. "What have you gotten us into?" she whispered, fear threading through her voice. And as the realization blurred reality, a voice echoed in the eerie silence. "Welcome to the truth." It was deep, layered. It chilled her to the bone. Suddenly, everything she thought was true was gone, and all she had left was a looming question. What was the truth? The air crackled with tension, electric and suffocating. Gabriella stood tense, heart racing, eyes darting around the eerie warehouse. The shadows felt alive, twisting and dancing, suffocating the flickers of hope that once shone bright. The voice that echoed in the silence seemed to wrap around her, binding her to the chaos. Welcome to the truth. The man who spoke didn't step into the light. He was hidden, lurking beyond the shadows, and his voice was low, resonating deep within her bones. Fear pulsed through Gabriella, quick and relentless. Who was he? What did he know that she didn't? "Are you going to explain yourself?" Christopher snapped, stepping forward, but his confidence wavered, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "Like you explained everything?" Renee threw back, anger sparking like fire. "This is your mess." Their argument cut through the tension, but it didn't distract from the growing dread. Shadows loomed near, pressing in on them. Gabriella clutched Lily close, her heart pounding like a drum, and then it happened. The lights flickered, dimming to near darkness, and the air shifted. A new presence arrived, like a cold draft slicing through the tension. And suddenly the door behind them slammed shut with a loud bang, echoing against the walls. The dust-covered man spun around, eyes wide with fear. "No, they found us!" "Who?" Gabriella felt panic clawing at her throat. But before he could reply, another figure entered the dim light. A woman, tall and fierce, stepped into view, her eyes glinting like steel. She had an air of authority that felt almost otherworldly. "You shouldn't have come here, Christopher." Her voice was sharp, like a blade cutting through the air. Gabriella's heart raced. "What do you mean?" But then, the unexpected. The woman reached into her coat, and with a swift motion, she pulled out a small device. It glowed ominously in the low light. "I was sent to retrieve the key." Everything shattered around Gabriella at that word. A key. A pivotal truth shifted the atmosphere in the warehouse. "Lily!" Gabriella screamed, clutching her daughter tighter. "What's the key?" "What do you want with her?" "No," Christopher snapped, stepping in front of Gabriella, protective yet trembling. "You leave her out of this." But the woman merely chuckled coldly. "She's not just a child, Christopher. You know this." With that, the dust-covered man gasped, his face going pale as realization ravaged him. "What have you done?" Suddenly, all the pieces fell into place for Gabriella. The whispered secrets, the ominous warnings, the sense of danger that had clung to Christopher. Her heart sank deeper into her chest. "No, it can't be. Lily can't be." But before she could finish, the device the woman held blasted a bright light. It shot upward, illuminating the space around them. The glow cast eerie shadows, revealing details in the room she hadn't noticed. And then the truth struck like a thunderclap. The shadows became figures. Faces emerged, all staring, all watching. They were part of something she couldn't comprehend. "No, you're lying!" Gabriella shrieked, terror flooding her veins. But as the reality crystallized, another thought gripped her. You have to stay away from her. Renee, overcome with rage and desperation, stepped forward. "What did you plan, Christopher?" Before tensions could escalate, the device flared again, beams shooting out in every direction. The figures shifted, their eyes locking onto Gabriella and Lily, hollow and haunting. "Get down!" the dust-covered man shouted again, pushing Gabriella and Lily to the ground. The warehouse erupted into chaos, the lights strobing wildly, disorienting. Gabriella's pulse quickened, panic gripping her heart. And then it hit her, a revelation so stark it knocked the breath from her lungs. Lily wasn't just the key, she was the target. The room spun as Gabriella scrambled to her feet, urgency igniting every nerve in her body. The noise roared, darkness converging around them, and as fear wrapped tightly around her heart, she only had one thought, a desperate need to protect her daughter from whatever horrors lay ahead. "Run!" Gabriella screamed, adrenaline pulsing like fire in her veins, shoving past Christopher, pulling Lily along. But the shadows closed in, the faces were watching, the truth looming heavy over them. In a whirlwind of chaos, nothing made sense anymore. The only thing, they were trapped in a nightmare, and the reason behind it was inching closer, unraveling the very fabric of their reality. Would they escape? Would Gabriella uncover the truth before it was too late? And just like that, moments hung in the air, heavy with uncertainty. Gabriella clutched Lily tighter, the chaos spiraling around them. Her heart raced, pounding against her chest like a frantic drum. They had to get out, had to escape whatever nightmare this was. Christopher's expression twisted between desperation and fear, a silent plea to understand. "Run!" he yelled again. But where? The shadows danced around them, alive and watching. He didn't know if they were enemy or ally anymore. And then the unexpected happened. The lights surged bright again, illuminating the warehouse. A haunting clarity swept through the room, revealing it in stark detail. Figures stood frozen, caught in the moment, shadows of anger and dread painted on their faces. "Wait!" The dust-covered man raised his hands, trying to calm the storm brewing. "You don't understand. It's not what you think." But his words were lost in the clamor of the moment. "What isn't what we think?" Gabriella shot back, her voice high with panic. "What have you brought us into?" Just then, the woman with the device spoke again, her voice chilling. "You're not safe here, but it's not your past you need to worry about. It's what's coming." A sudden commotion erupted outside. They were here, charging toward them, the people chasing them. Shadows fell over the door, and just when it seemed the darkness would swallow them whole, the entrance burst open. In walked a figure dressed in black, face hidden beneath a hood. "Game over," a voice echoed, deep and mocking. Gabriella felt her breath hitch. Who was this? Then everything shifted, like a scene from a horror movie. The figure pulled off the hood, and Gabriella's heart stopped. It was a familiar face, one she hadn't seen in years. "Lucas!" Gabriella gasped, staggered, disbelief flooding her. "No, it can't be." Her heart hammered in her chest as memories flooded back, some sweet, some painfully bitter. He had been her brother, lost in the world of bad choices. She thought he was dead. What are you doing here?" Her voice trembled as she looked around. Confused eyes turned to her as the room fell silent. "I've been sent to finish this," Lucas sneered, looking more predator than protector. "And you, Gabriella, are right in the middle." Bile rose in her throat. Everything she thought she knew was collapsing. "No, you can't hurt us," she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. "Oh, but I'm not here to hurt you." He laughed, a dark, twisted sound that sent shivers down her spine. "I'm here to save you." Before she could react, Lucas pressed a button on the device in the woman's hand. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted, a shocking burst that literally rocked the warehouse. The bodies that stood there were tossed back like leaves in a storm. "Come on," Lucas shouted, extending his hand toward Gabriella. Time froze. The air thickened with tension and confusion. "What do you mean to save us?" she yelled back, her heart in her throat. "Gabriella, wake up! There's so much I haven't told you!" Lucas shot back, urgency spilling from his lips. Gabriella glanced at Christopher, whose face transformed from shock to disbelief. "Your brother?" he murmured in a whisper, realization dawning in the midst of chaos. "What do you know?" Gabriella's voice broke. She felt the ground shift, a quake of betrayal. Before Lucas could answer, the warehouse echoed with more violence. Walls shook, and they were enveloped in darkness. The device shattered, sending sparks flying. Everything spun wildly. "Get down!" Leo, the dust-covered man, lunged for Lily and pulled her close, but Gabriella shoved him away. "No! Get away from her!" Chaos erupted as the figures mobilized, the truth spiraling into shadows. "He's lying!" she yelled, trying to grasp the shifting reality. What was happening? Who was friend and who was foe? Suddenly, a horrific realization crashed over her. Maybe Lucas was right. Maybe everything they believed was part of a much darker plan. And as the dust settled and the darkness solidified around them, silence enveloped, heavy and laden with dread. "Lily," Gabriella breathed, grasping for her daughter. The truth felt like quicksand, everything slipping away. And in that moment, she wondered, what if unraveling this nightmare meant losing herself completely? Gabriella clutched Lily tightly, the frantic rhythm of her heart echoing in her ears. Everything around her threatened to implode, shadows closing in as confusion and dread intertwined. Lucas's presence hung heavy in the air. Could she trust him? Could she trust anyone? "Gabriella!" Lucas yelled through the chaos, his face etched with desperation. "You don't understand!" But every word felt hollow against the cacophony of uncertainty. Before she could process, the warehouse trembled as if it were alive. A deep rumble shook the very foundation, throwing everyone off balance. Gabriella stumbled, instinctively pulling Lily closer. The shadows flickered, and through the dim light, a chilling whisper slithered through the room. "The clock is ticking." Something twisted deep in Gabriella's gut. A countdown? What did that mean? The device, the weapon, Lucas had pressed against the chaos, was now growing hotter, pulsing with its own heartbeat. "It's too late," Lucas shouted, desperation etched on his features. "They need Lily. We need to go." But the moment hung suspended in time as a blinding light burst from the device, engulfing everything in its reach. Gabriella shut her eyes, the warmth wrapping around her like a blanket. Then, silence. When she opened her eyes, the scene had changed. No longer were they in the warehouse. They stood amidst an open field, under a crystal blue sky. Confusion danced in the sunlight. "Where are we?" Gabriella gasped, scanning the unfamiliar terrain. Panic surged again. Lily still clung to her, eyes wide with fear. "Lucas!" He stood beside her, but appeared different. A flicker of something that wasn't just familial warmth in his gaze. "We're safe for now," he replied, his voice softer, almost soothing. But beneath that softness, an unknown tension simmered. "What do you mean for now?" She pressed, heart racing. Just then, the ground trembled, and she caught a glimpse of movement in the distance. Dark figures, shadows, emerged, marching steadily toward them. "Oh no," Gabriella whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. Lucas's demeanor shifted. It hardened. "We have to move, now!" The urgency in his voice snapped Gabriella to attention. She turned to run, but confusion gripped her. In the back of her mind, something felt off. The dark figures grew closer. As they neared, the sunlight cast their features into harsh relief. Gabriella gasped, recognizing their faces. It was horrific. Their friends, their community, all twisted with anger and confusion. They bore expressions of betrayal. "Why are you here?" one of them boomed, his voice echoing across the field. It was David, a man Gabriella had known for years. "You think you can run from this?" "What are you talking about?" Gabriella's voice trembled. Everything felt like a fever dream. Lucas stepped closer to her, shielding her, and in that moment, his hand brushed the small device. "Lucas, what is this?" she demanded. "What did you bring us into?" Before he could answer, the venue shifted again. The shadows stretched longer, and the taunts of their friends echoed like ghosts. "You chose this," David shouted, the accusation laden with disappointment. "Chosen what?" Gabriella felt her mind racing. But before anyone could respond, a sudden gust of wind swept through the field, carrying with it a deafening whisper that sent shivers down her spine. "Gabriella, you're the one, the prophecy." A pang of recognition surged in her chest, a long-buried truth that seemed to awaken in the chaos. Suddenly, everything fell into place. The warnings, the secrets, the shadows lurking at the edges of her life. And just then, the entire world seemed to shift again. The figures converged, shadows eclipsing everything. The air buzzed with energy, tinged by an ancient darkness. "Make your choice," they all echoed together. Confusion engulfed Gabriella. The ground shook beneath them. The light dimmed, and for an instant, everything stopped. The shadows nipped at her brain, the air stale and thick with fear. She could feel her heart thundering in her chest, a primal urge to flee. "Gabriella!" Lucas shouted, but the world narrowed into an overwhelming rush. Everything exploded into a glimmering light. In that moment, she understood that the truth she never knew was tied into her very existence. A choice that would alter everything she had known. The brilliance around her faded, leaving only the question echoing within. What fate awaited them now? Gabriella felt the ground shake beneath her feet, but she held on to Lily tightly, grounding herself against the whirlwind of emotions. The figures around her loomed like dark clouds, their faces twisted in anger, hurt, confusion. "What do you want from us?" she shouted, trying to keep her voice steady, though her heart raced like a drum. David, once a friend, now stood poised to attack, fists clenched. "You can't just walk away from what you've done." "Enough!" Lucas's voice rang out, slicing through the tension. "This is not the time for division. We need to unite against the real enemy." His eyes darted to the shadows that crept closer, impatient and watching. Gabriella felt something shift within her. She remembered the whispers, the warnings, and the choices she made. "Is this about Lily?" The question hung heavy in the air. "Is she really the key?" "Yes," Lucas shouted, desperation spilling from him. "But not in the way you think. They need her for something bigger, something terrifying. If we don't move now, it will all be lost." Lily's small hand trembled in Gabriella's grip. "Mommy, I'm scared." Gabriella squeezed her daughter tighter, determination rushing through her. "We won't let them hurt you, sweetheart." A wave of strength surged within her as she turned to Lucas. "What do we need to do?" "Stick together," Lucas urged. "We follow my lead, and we run." He glanced at the advancing figures, fear flickering across his face. "We face them together, trust me." "I don't know if I can," Gabriella murmured, doubt gnawing at her insides. But she saw the shadows creeping in, and in that moment, she chose to trust him. "Now!" Lucas screamed, bolting toward an exit that shimmered like a haven. Gabriella grabbed Lily's hand, and they ran. The air clamored with anger behind them, but hope ignited in Gabriella's chest. They dashed through the doorway, breathless. The world outside was clear and bright, sunlight flooding over them. It felt like freedom, but it was short-lived. The shadows followed, manifesting into real men, determined to grab what they thought was theirs. "Keep moving!" Lucas shouted again, urgency lacing every word. Gabriella felt her lungs burn, but she pushed forward, Lily right beside her. Suddenly, a figure appeared out of nowhere, a woman, fierce and vibrant. "Go, I'll hold them off," she yelled, defiantly taking her stance. Gabriella recognized her as a protector, someone who stood for truth amidst the chaos. "Please, no," Gabriella almost faltered, but the woman's resolute expression spurred them on. "You have to save her." With tears in her eyes, Gabriella tore her gaze away. They ran faster, adrenaline pumping as the sounds of the pursuit roared behind them. Gabriella's heart raced, pounding in tune with Lily's small footsteps. They burst through a final barrier into a bright clearing. Safety shimmered ahead. "Just a little further," Lucas encouraged, pushing them all on. "We can reach the river. It's our only chance." As they got closer, urgent footsteps pounded behind them. The figures were gaining ground, angry shadows hungry for capture. "Faster," Gabriella urged, though her legs felt heavy. Determination fueled her movements. It wasn't just for her, it was for Lily. With one final push, they dove into the water, the coldness shocking them to life. Gabriella held Lily close, their breaths mingling with the rush around them. The figures loomed over the riverbank, shouts echoing behind. "Are they coming?" Lily panted as they swam. "No," Lucas replied. "They won't follow us here." As the water enclosed them, Gabriella felt a weight lift from her chest. "Is it over?" she gasped, the adrenaline gradually fading. But deep down, unease still lingered. The shadows hadn't vanished completely. Lucas glanced at them, concerns heavy in his eyes. "It's a new beginning, but the mission isn't done." Gabriella felt uncertainty swirl within. Would they always be running? Then, as they surfaced, Lucas turned to her with fierce conviction. "We need to find out what it means to protect each other in this world. Together." Gabriella nodded slowly, embracing the thought. "Together," she echoed, as hope flickered in her heart. But shadows still lurked at the edges of her mind. "Are you ready for what lies ahead?" Lucas asked, determination burning brightly in his gaze. And as they floated on, uncertainty painted the horizon. But one thing felt clear. This was only the beginning of their story. Now, listen closely. If you love this journey, you need to subscribe right now. Don't miss our exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now. Your support boosts our reach. Flood the comments with your thoughts and theories. What do you think will happen next? And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to know this conclusion. You're the real fam, and every ounce of your support makes a difference. Don't wait 1 second more. Show your love.